I'm Stephanie, and welcome to the Reading Room. This is the playlist where I review what I read in the last month and do my best to keep it spoiler-free, or at least I will warn you if I am about to spoil something. And as I say in all my reviews, these are solely about the books and not about the authors as people. So let's go ahead and dive in and talk about the really 8 books that I read in October, and you'll see why. But these are all the books I got to read in spooky season. And even though this video will be coming out a little bit later, happy Halloween to everyone. But let's get into it and talk about spooky season reads. So first up was a ghost story to kick off spooky season, and that was A Haunting in the Arctic by CJ Cooke. I have enjoyed Cooke's witchy reads and really wanted to give this ghost story a shot. Let's go ahead and see what this promised. The year is 1901, and Nikki is attacked. Then wakes on board the Orman. A whaling ship embarks on what could be its last voyage. With land still weeks away, it's just her, the freezing ocean, and the crew. And they're all owed something only she can give them. Now, more than 100 years later, the wreck of the Orman has washed up on the forbidding remote coast of Iceland. It's scheduled to be destroyed, but explorer Dominique feels an inexplicable pull to document its last days, even though those who have ventured onto the ship before her have met uncanny ends. On board the boat, Dominique will uncover a grim past riddled with lies, cruelty, and murder, and her discovery will change everything. Because she'll soon realize she's not alone. Something has walked the floors of the Orman for over a century. Something that craves revenge. So before I do get into the review, I feel like I need to give content and trigger warnings, as this book gets very dark and could be very hard to read for some people. I really wish there had been a list of warnings at the start of this book, and even potentially when I originally bought it, because I probably would not have bought it. I wanted a ghost haunting an abandoned ship story, and this is not that. I guess it kind of has some of it, but also not really. In this, there is a lot, and I mean a lot, of SA and just straight up a character getting R-worded over and over again. It just became torture rhymes with corn at one point, and I guess it does make for a good revenge story setup, but it was a really rough read and just felt so excessive after a while. It just becomes bleak and overwhelming, and this book left me feeling absolutely hopeless. If I wasn't already depressed, this book would have kicked me into the deep end. I really wish I had had those warnings, so I am passing them on to others who might pick this up and not want to read that. They're just looking for a ghost story. You'll kind of find it in these pages, but for the most part, it's not really there. It's kind of a secondary piece to just watching this one woman just get tortured over and over again. I've read books that include that, but this just felt like non-stop assault on both the character and me as a reader. And I felt the payoff for the trauma in the end was so not worth it. If I wasn't already struggling with that aspect of the book, the other timeline that we're following is boring as hell, and the protagonist, Dom or Dominique, just really rubbed me the wrong way. She's exploring this ship, and she doesn't own it. She has come out to this remote place in Iceland to find it. Others find it too, because they also know it's going to be destroyed, and she is just extremely antagonistic toward them. But then she suddenly teams up with them, even though she's constantly thinking nasty and unfounded thoughts about them. But then she's also fine bossing them around. But hey, when you're making breakfast, you can go ahead and make me a serving too, because I'm totally fine eating your food, even though I hate you. Bitch, you would not survive another day without these people. And then in that timeline there is so much focus on TikToks that it doesn't fit with the story and just comes across as very, how do you do, fellow kids? The whole social media angle did not feel realistic or authentic to the story. In a way, it felt very childish. Now with this, I get what Cooke was going for, especially after reading her author's note at the end. I think this needed a bit more work. This book made me feel how I do after reading a bad Frida McFadden, where once we get the twist, the rest of the book is just kind of obliterated and could not have happened that way. It's not a good twist when it undoes everything I just read. Now, on the positive side, I do think Cooke is a master at atmosphere and creepy settings. You know, we have an abandoned ship. It is a great setting for a ghost story. I mean, I loved Pirates of the Caribbean as a kid. I expected this to be so ethereal and mystical. Has some of that, but it doesn't really commit to it. Like, we spend so much more time watching them make TikToks and trying to connect to the internet. Like, I didn't come for the TikToks. I came for a ghost story. I also felt like we spend pages and pages going over the same things, and we're laser focused on the mundane details, and then the ending is super abrupt, and honestly, I found it to be ridiculous. I think it's going for the shock factor, but mostly I'm more shocked that the editor agreed that this is a legitimately good ending. I hate to say it, but I gave this 1 star and cannot recommend this. The ending is a disaster, the themes did not hit for me, and there's no real catharsis for the misery that we endured through the rest of the pages. I honestly feel like I just wasted my time with this story. And I am very disappointed because I know she can write really, really well. There's a good idea for a story here, but I think it was lost in previous drafts or outlines. I already do have a wine club episode about this book up, just because I could not wait until the end of spooky season because I had some thoughts, I had to share them. So you can go ahead and watch that. I'll link that down in the description below if you want to know what happens in this book without reading it yourself. And again, I'm sorry, I really liked The Lighthouse Witches by Cooke, and I did find the Book of Witching to just be okay, but I feel like Cooke is having the opposite effect of how I feel about Rachel Harrison books. Like, I didn't like my first read by Harrison, but each one I read has gotten so much better, and I'm absolutely loving her work now. It kind of feels like the more I read of Cooke, the less I like it. Again, she is great at atmosphere and setting the scene, but I signed up for a creepy ghost on an abandoned ship, not a rewrite of Taken with TikToks. This was an extremely unfortunate start to spooky season. So I picked up something much lighter next, as I really needed a palate cleanser and basically to restore my will to live. So I grabbed a cozy murder mystery that promised to be funny, and that is The Grim Reaper's Guide to Catching a Killer by Maxie Dara. Let's go ahead and see what this promised. It's not like it used to be. Modern day Grim Reapers wear business casual, not black cloaks. They don't carry scythes. They work for Scythe, secure collection, yielding, and transportation of human essences, where the Department of Natural Causes is the least exciting gig. And that's how Kathy Valance likes it. Boring and predictable. She has enough stress in her personal life. She's mid-divorce, pregnant, and terrified that she doesn't have what it takes to be a good mom. Then she goes to pick up a new client and finds his soul is missing. When she finally tracks down Connor Ortiz, he angrily insists he was murdered, and he refuses to move on until Kathy finds out why and by whom. Kathy has only 45 days to solve the mystery before the boy's soul is doomed to roam the earth as a ghost forever. To do that, she'll have to call in the help of her retired mentor, her almost ex-husband, and, inconveniently, Connor himself. This is the wildest case of her career, and one wrong move could cost Kathy her job, not to mention her life. So, when I was in high school, I watched the show Dead Like Me and loved it. I loved how the Grim Reapers still had to hold down jobs and live while also helping people move on to the other side, while not knowing themselves what is over there. I loved our main character George and her dry sense of humor and basically her aloofness towards everything. She was kind of just drifting along in her life, not really knowing what to do with it, when it ends. She's killed by debris from an orbiting space station, which it was a toilet seat to be exact, and she is now a Grim Reaper working in the accident division. She has to extract souls from people before they die and basically help them go into the light, quite literally. I thought that was one of the coolest aspects about the show is the entrance to the afterlife looked different to everyone, but it was always like this vibrant blue and like very glowy. You know, some people saw a circus, some people saw a temple, gates, or any site that would be really inviting to them. So I loved that show, and I kind of expected similar vibes from this. It's about a woman working for death, but it is extremely organized and professional. I mean, just what we all want after death. More fucking paperwork. And this was a cozy murder mystery, but my god, was this slow and boring. I gave it a chance. I finished it. I did finish it, but I was skimming the last 50 pages or so because I just couldn't take it anymore. And I will own that other readers might not have the same problem, as cozy isn't a genre that I read from often. But Kathy, our main character, is a sad sack of a person who constantly mentions that her flaw is that everything she touches turns to shit, but we don't ever really see it in action. We just hear about it over and over again. Like, her dad basically called it like her Saddam touch because it's Midas backwards, and okay, I would buy that, but I would love to like really see it. I guess I could be generous and say that we do see it in how bad at espionage she is. Like, there's a point where she has to go like somewhat undercover to extract information, but is just so fucking awful at it. I would rather send a 5-year-old in to do that job rather than Kathy. She acts like she has no idea how to even talk to other human beings, much less charm them and get information out of them. It was honestly comically cringe, but like not in, I was laughing at her, not with her. She's also sad because she's divorcing a man who basically worships the ground that she walks on because she has to keep her job a secret, except that she works with other people who are married and don't seem to have any problems with this part. Like, I'm sure she could figure out something. And now she is pregnant. Now, I'm gonna say I'm a few years younger than Kathy, and I feel like even at my age, I would be going to the doctor a lot more if I were pregnant. At my age, I would be considered a geriatric pregnancy, which is kind of insane because I'm probably at the point in my life now where I feel financially and emotionally responsible for a child. But I feel like I would have frequent check-ins, sonograms, and testing to make sure that my baby is developing correctly. While Kathy does occasionally like clutch her stomach protectively, she often goes long stretches without eating and gets very little sleep. Like, ma'am, your baby is trying to leach calcium from you. Can you please have a glass of milk every now and then take a good nap? Like, she mostly complains about how fat she's getting, but I don't know how because she never eats and is constantly throwing up. Like, I've never been pregnant, so I can't really talk too much about this, but it just, I don't know, it didn't feel very realistic to me. And then there's also the point where she doesn't really want to be a mom, so I don't know how to feel about it either. Like, a book that I think does this theme a million times better is Notes from the Underbelly by Risa Green. In that, our main character is pretty hesitant as she's not sure that she's ready, but then she and her husband do conceive. Her journey is her learning that she's more maternal than she thought, and that she will be able to do this, and she's now getting pretty excited about it. Kathy, in this book, goes from not wanting to be a mom to not wanting to be a mom. So it's just, we're not really going on a journey with her. And again, she is divorcing her husband because she can't tell him about her job, but she's going to raise a child? Like, what the hell does she plan on doing then? Oh, and even worse, she doesn't even tell her ex-husband that he is going to be a father until she is 6 months into her pregnancy. What the fuck, Kathy? Like I said, Kathy is a bit of a negative Nancy, but is balanced by her soon-to-be ex-husband, Simon. Simon is an absolute sweetie. He is upbeat, and he is so excited to be a dad. He's going out and like getting her books on pregnancy and like what to expect when you're expecting, and just trying to figure out like, how can I be involved? And oh, I'm so excited. This is gonna be my baby. He's definitely not the stereotypical romantic interest who's like a 7-foot-tall, growly, grumpy alpha hole. He is a balding short king who is very happy with who he is. He doesn't care what others think about him because he likes himself, and I love to see it. I really enjoyed his character. But again, Kathy needs to break up with him because eventually, you know, her Saddam touch or whatever is going to rear its ugly head and she's gonna break his heart. I get it. We had to set up some like conflict and overarching arc, but like it felt a little flimsy. Like, Kathy, you're in your 40s. I think it's time to go see a therapist if you're still self-sabotaging this much. Now, I do think the mystery aspect in this is pretty good, but there are major plot holes around it. And there is a ticking time clock element that just does not work in this, like, at all. Like, normally a ticking time clock ramps up the urgency, the tension, and it feels like we really have to keep moving because, like, we are coming up to a deadline. The clock in this is set to 45 days. 45 days is a long time. And there would be points where we hear that like 3 days have passed and they were no closer to figuring out what was going on. So why was the clock set to 45 days if we have so many freaking days to just like piss away? It just felt so manufactured for them to be all, oh, we have to figure this out. But then Kathy does finally sleep and sleeps in until noon the next day, has a few bites of chicken and goes back to bed. Do we need to move fast or not? Like, pick a lane here. And the whole countdown portion of the book just kind of cemented the idea that nothing is really happening in this. It's very repetitive, and again, quite frankly, boring. There is some action at the end, but it also felt like too little too late. And there are like 3 instances of a gun firing as a chapter cliffhanger. It's too much. I don't believe it anymore. Like, I'm not scared because we're gonna find out like, oh, the person ducked and like tuck and roll. I'm also gonna say, as someone who drops an F-bomb every other word, even I found the swearing a bit excessive at times in this. Like, it does add to the characterization of Connor, who is swearing all the time, but I do want to warn people if you are thinking of picking this up, because I don't think this is very typical for cozy books. And I almost would have loved it more if we saw how much Connor is swearing at the beginning, because, like, that's his persona. It's his tough guy. He's, like, you know, dropping F-bombs everywhere. But it lessens as he lets himself be more real and vulnerable with Kathy. Like, again, maybe it's a shield or a front for him. But then on the flip side, like, hers could start ramping up because she too is letting herself be more real and not as worried about what others think or trying to be this polite, timid person. I think it just would have been a really fun way to add to their characterization, but I just didn't see it here. I also did really like Connor, and I liked their odd couple relationship. It was very endearing watching their friendship grow. You know, she's trying to figure out what's going on with him. He's also kind of now getting invested in her personal life, and I thought that was the best part of the book. Now, this was said to be pretty funny, but I honestly think the funniest bit was when I finished the book and I read the author's bio. Her humor came through just fine there. Where was that writing style for the rest of this book? Now, I do think that if you enjoy cozy mysteries, you will probably enjoy this more than I did. I was not vibing with the cutesy humor in this. I had a lot of high hopes for something like funny, quirky, and paranormal. This is also supposed to be the first in a series, but for me, this introduction is not pulling its weight. I'm not really interested in continuing the series after this. I wanted a murder mystery, not hearing about Kathy's personal problems for 300 some pages. I am gonna give this 2 stars because the concept is good, this cover is super cute, and I did like the relationship between the dead and the Grim Reaper. But again, this kind of dragged, and I was really happy to be done with this when I finished it and finally being able to move on to something different. So next, I picked up a read that I have been saving for October, and that is When the Wolf Comes Home by Nat Cassidy. This is my first read by Cassidy, and let's just say that it will not be my last, but let's go ahead and see what this promised. One night, Jess, a struggling actress, finds a 5-year-old runaway hiding in the bushes outside her apartment. After a violent, bloody encounter with the boy's father, she and the boy find themselves running for their lives. As they attempt to evade the boy's increasingly desperate father, horrifying incidents of butchery follow them. At first, Jess thinks she understands what they're up against, but she's about to learn that there's more to these surreal and grisly events than she could have ever imagined, and that when the wolf finally comes home, no one will be spared. I am also going to go ahead and read Cassidy's content warnings for this book. 1, so that you know what you're getting into, and 2, because his closing line is funny as hell. I loved it. I'll never understand why some people get so upset about content warnings. If you're a sicko like me, all these do is give you a little preview of what flavors of nasty fun you're in for. And if you're a reader who prefers to avoid certain subjects or prefers to go in with some bolstering, well, forewarned is forearmed, right? This is specifically a story about the slippery nature of fear and how important it is to find healthy ways to live with it. So I'm more than happy to provide a heads up. This book contains graphic depictions and or discussions of murder, gore, dismemberment, needle trauma, bloodborne diseases, spiders, insects, ideations about taking one's own life, abuse, grief, alcoholism, parent death, child trauma, child endangerment, and a whole lot more. It borrows a few tropes from fairy tales. Happy endings isn't one of them. And hey, if you are the sort of person who's offended by the existence of content warnings, I'm truly sorry. Maybe next time I'll give you a little heads up that they're coming, so you'll be able to prepare yourself. I just think that's hilarious. So I absolutely loved this book. I devoured this, much like the titular wolf, though I do want to say that this is not a traditional werewolf story. This gave me like such strong Stranger Things vibes, but makes Steve Harrington more of a main character back in season 1. I also thought this had some like supernatural vibes going on, which was absolutely great. This is gory, this is action-packed, and it is hilarious. Y'all know I love a snarky main character, and Jess absolutely rose to the challenge. I love Jess, and I even really loved her mom, Cookie. I thought Jess was also so good with the little boy, even though she is absolutely terrified, running on no sleep, and has zero idea what she is doing. I loved watching her figure things out and do her best to protect this little boy. Now, this is very much a on-the-run story, as our characters are basically being chased from one location to the next. So if that's not your jam, you might struggle with this. I didn't mind that. And again, kind of like Stranger Things, I think this had a really fun tone. Like, there are scenes of dismemberment and gore, but it can also be really campy in other scenes. But these tonal shifts were handled very well. You really never know what is going to happen next in the story. And it definitely went in a direction that I wasn't expecting, but I really liked it. I just thought that this balanced its tones and themes really well and keeps the story moving. Like he noted, this book explores fear and how we can give our fears life, but what if the worst thing we fear is something uncontrollable within our own selves? I thought it was a great exploration, and it was explored in a really interesting way. This book was very visual, and there were maybe like 1 or 2 scenes that I had trouble picturing what was going on, but for the most part, I thought the descriptions in this were really great, and I could experience the horror of what was happening with the characters on page. I gave this 4.5 out of 5 stars. I absolutely loved this. The only things that are keeping it from being a 5-star read were the ending, which is realistic but felt a little stretched out, as things just kind of kept happening when like I feel like, okay, we need to be like winding down here. And also for the fact that I could take the ending in 2 ways. I think the ending that Cassidy meant for readers to see is the darker of the 2 ways I see it, and I didn't absolutely love that, but it kind of is open to your interpretation in a sense. And there were some points where I felt like scenes were kind of contrived. Like, a character will make a choice, but then 2 seconds later, like, pull a Job from Arrested Development of, I made a huge mistake. And so they'll change their minds, and it felt like they had to do that just so we could get to that scene, and then so we could create the conflict for it. But overall, loved this, couldn't get enough of this book, and I cannot wait to read something else by Cassidy now. So next was another spooky book that I've had on my shelf for a year. Seriously, it is the September 2024 horror book of the month pick, and that is Sleep Tight by J.H. Markert. Apologies if I'm mispronouncing that. Let's go ahead and see what this promised. Beware the one who got away. Father Silence once terrorized the rural town of Twisted Tree, disguising himself as a priest to prey on the most vulnerable members of society. When the police finally found his house of horrors, they uncovered 19 bodies and one survivor, a boy now locked away in a hospital for the criminally insane. Nearly 2 decades later, Father Silence is finally put to death. But by the next morning, the detective who made the original arrest is found dead. A new serial killer is taking credit for the murder and calling himself the outcast. The detective's daughter, Tess Claiborne, is a detective herself, haunted by childhood trauma and horrified by the death of her father and the resurgence of Father Silence's legacy. When Tess's daughter is kidnapped by the outcast, Tess is forced to face her worst fears and long-buried memories. With no leads to follow, she travels back to Twisted Tree to visit the boy who survived and see what secrets might be buried in the tangled web of his broken mind. With captivating prose and an old-school horror flair, Sleep Tight is a must-read, haunting tale from a true master of the genre. So for me, I think the marketing of this is somewhat misleading. I would not consider this horror. I'm honestly amazed this won a Goodreads award for best horror. How? Like, at best, this is a thrilling police procedural. There's a mystery, but the horror elements feel like a horror movie that was edited for TV. We never really see the horror elements, and the brief ones we do, I found to be, like, comical and not scary. I also thought this is a kitchen sink book. Everything is thrown at us. We've got cults and kidnappings and infidelity, pill popping, repressed memories, revenge killings, nuns and priests, violence against children, dissociative identity disorder, SA. I mean, this has everything. Like, put it all in there and surely one point will scare readers. I'm honestly just disappointed by this. I think it had a really great idea, but there's also too many ideas and way too many characters. My God, were there too many characters. And I'm also just left with too many unanswered questions. Like, there's a major thing that happens in this, and it's never addressed how it happened. I guess it happened to be all spooky. I also did not love our main character, Tess. She's kind of brash and at times really dense, but then other times she's able to, like, jump to conclusions that she should not be able to given what we know. I mean, we were near the end of the book, so, like, we had to keep things moving, but I could just not buy how she couldn't figure out one thing that was staring her in the face, but then could suddenly put all these random little clues together to figure something out. And she kept having these flashbacks that were just too convenient for my liking. I also have to say, to me, it read very obvious that this is a man writing a woman. I went into this expecting a horror read for spooky season. I was not scared at all. I found this to be needlessly confusing, and I do see that Markert has written for the screen, and that makes a ton of sense after reading this. There are scenes that I'm like, okay, yeah, I see how this would play out and sound on a TV, but reading it is kind of cringe. It's just not working for this medium. And honestly, for the love of God, stop having characters say each other's names all the time. I know Danny and Tess are having a conversation. I don't need their names repeated every single line. You are not paid by the word, Markert. In the end, I don't really know how, I mean, obviously I'm not loving this, but I don't really know how I feel about this. This was exhausting to keep track of, but also kind of boring at the same time. Again, I just cannot call this a horror book. This is a detective mystery. There are some good things happening in this, but it's trying to make it feel all like, ooh, spooky. And it just became a convoluted mess. And I'm still left with questions. I'm sorry, I'm giving this 2 stars. I know I won't be able to talk about this book in a few weeks because I'm just not going to remember what happened in this. I think I will remember that I read it, and I will know that because this cover is great. Friggin' love this. But I'm just going to remember that the actual story is not great. But what will be great is me ranting about this in a future wine club video. Yay! I did see a review on Goodreads by a reader named Steph, not me, and she said, this is one of those books where I read it, and I think, if this can be published, then my stuff definitely has a chance. So thank you for writing such an astonishing piece of garbage that it actually has inspired me to finish my own piece of garbage. And I agree with Steph on that one. If this got published and won Goodreads Awards for horror, anyone has a shot. So next, I needed to pick up something that I felt sure was going to pull me out of the reading slump that Sleep Tight put me in, and that was Rachel Harrison's Play Nice. Let's go ahead and see what this promised. Cleo Louise Barnes leads a picture-perfect life as a stylist and influencer, but beneath the glossy veneer, she harbors a not-so-glamorous secret. She grew up in a haunted house. Well, not haunted. Possessed. After Cleo's parents' messy divorce, her mother, Alix, moved Cleo and her sisters into a house occupied by a demon, or so Alix claimed. That's not what Cleo's sisters remember or what the courts determined when they stripped her of custody after she went off the deep end, but Alix was insistent. She even wrote a book about her experience in the house. After Alix's sudden death, the supposedly possessed house passes to Cleo and her sisters. Where her sisters see childhood trauma, Cleo sees an opportunity for house flipping content. Only as the home makeover process begins, Cleo discovers there might be some truth to her mother's claims. As memories resurface and Cleo finally reads her mother's book, the presence in the house becomes more real and more sinister, revealing ugly truths that threaten to shake Cleo's beautiful life to its very foundation. So praise Satan, this is just what I needed. Humor meets horror in this. As I've said before, I did not really like my first read by Harrison, but then I gave her another chance and read Such Sharp Teeth, which I absolutely loved. And this book actually kind of reminded me of that, especially through our main character, because Cleo in this, you're either going to cackle and love her, even though you're going to be thinking like, girl, you're messed up, or you are going to despise her. There is no middle ground here. She is a cat playing with a mouse before eating it, and she is not picky about who her mouse is. Her sisters, dad, stepmom, love interests, friends, strangers, they are all fair game to her because she doesn't care about who she's playing with. She will toy with them simply because she can. She is a chaos demon herself before she even moves into the possessed house. Cleo is very stubborn, blunt, impulsive, reckless, sarcastic, verging on just plain mean. She's pretty spoiled, self-absorbent, and ungrateful. Now, I'm saying this because if you choose to continue reading this, don't come back and be like, oh, Cleo really sucks. Like I said, you are either going to love her or you are going to hate her. She craves attention and has a very high opinion of herself. Like, she basically thinks everyone is obsessed with her, and she is not afraid to manipulate people to get what she wants. She's a straight-up bitch, but she also does not care if you think so. And I will say her bratty behaviors do continue to ramp and grow as we move through the book. I will say even I was getting sick of her by the end of the book, and I do think that is intentionally done because it serves the theme. She becomes insufferable, but it works with the rising action of the story. Now, I do wish we had gotten a definitive answer about something with Cleo. I don't really like that there was this one plot thread kind of left dangling, but I'll get over it. I also have to say, Cleo and her sisters put the fun in dysfunctional. I do love their relationship, their banter and their barbs, and how each has adapted post living in a haunted house. Like, Cleo is the baby of the trio, and then we've got Lita, the responsible, straight-laced eldest sister, Daphne, the peacekeeping middle sister, who is a chef. I mean, honestly, just imagine Prue, Piper, and Phoebe Halliwell from the OG Charmed, and you've got the sisters and their personalities down pat. Although I do want to give it a content warning for the character of Lita. She does have an ED, and it is pretty much on page. Now, Lita and Daphne do remember more of their time living with their mom in the possessed house, and do not want Cleo going back there. Their mom was unwell and terrified them when they were children. Cleo doesn't remember this as much, so she's not scared of her memories and she's not scared of this house. She's going to go flip it and sell it. But then she's also gifted her own copy of her mom's book about the time living in the haunted house, and it's a copy that her mom has annotated, telling Cleo where she's embellished or fictionalized things and where the truth is actually darker than what made it to the page. As Cleo starts working on the house, she senses, I don't think I'm alone. Something is leaving her notes and making itself known. Maybe her mom wasn't as crazy as everyone thought. Maybe her past isn't the version that her sisters and dad have told her it is. Does she actually want to know the truth? Now, I will say, I could not put this down. Okay, I'm a liar right now. It's a bit of a lie. I did put it down to watch the train wreck that is, unfortunately, the Denver season of Love is Blind. I would like to say, as a Denverite, I do not claim these people. I don't know where casting found them besides in the trash, but these people do not represent our city. This was a terrible season because they had a terrible cast of people who don't actually represent what Colorado is. But then when my friends and I have talked about it, of course they don't, because real people from Colorado would not go on this show. I mean, I guess Nick might be the most like Colorado out of them. Jordan too, but for the most part, nobody talked about their dogs. Nobody talked about skiing or hiking or what brewery they go to. These were not Colorado people. So besides that little side quest to watch that trash fire, I read this in a day. I was compelled, probably by the power of Christ, to finish this book. This was funny, it was at times scary, and it really explored some unique themes of a haunted house really well. It was The Haunting of Hill House meets Charmed meets American Psycho. This was a great spooky season read and had some really resonant themes. Plus, I just really enjoyed Harrison's writing in this and our snarky main leading lady, Cleo. Now, I do think the pacing does slow down quite a bit near the end to stretch things out, which I also didn't love, and Cleo does become the absolute worst at points. I think I wanted more out of the denouement as well, but overall, this was a fun, freaky read for October, and I am giving this 4 out of 5 stars. Next up, I went with a book that I expected to have like all the Fear Street vibes, and that is How to Survive Your Murder by Danielle Valentine. This is my first read by her, but I already do have a copy of Delicate Condition on my TBR, so I was really hoping that I would like her writing since I already had 2 of her books. But let's go ahead and see what this promised. Alice Lawrence is the sole witness in her sister's murder trial, and in the year since Claire's death, Alice's life has completely fallen apart. Her parents have gotten divorced. She's moved into an apartment that smells like bologna, and she is being forced to face her sister's killer in a courtroom full of people who doubt what she saw in the corn maze a year prior. Claire was an all-American girl, beautiful and bubbly, and a theater star. Alice was a nerd who dreamed of becoming a forensic pathologist and would rather stay at home to watch her favorite horror movies than party. Despite their differences, they were best friends, bonded by sisterhood, until Claire was taken away from her. On the first day of the murder trial, as Alice prepares to give her testimony, she is knocked out by a Sidney Prescott lookalike in the courthouse bathroom. When she wakes up, it is Halloween night a year earlier, the same day that Claire was murdered. Alice has until midnight to save her sister and find the real killer before he claims another victim. So our main character, Alice, is kind of our quirky, not like other girls because she loves horror movies and wears 90s clothes. Alice, sweetie, I too enjoy horror movies, and I actually wore those clothes when they were in style, back in the actual 90s. It was kind of both funny and depressing hearing her explain things from my own childhood. Like, unless you went to 4th grade playing Heads Up 7-Up in full-on swishy pants in bright neon colors, don't act like you invented 90s fashion. And we get it. You like horror movies. You don't have to keep telling us that that's all you watch, and you would certainly make smarter choices than the characters that you're watching in these horror movies. Okay, I'm done making fun of Alice. Alice's life is hard enough in the story. She's already lost her sister Claire to a homicidal maniac on Halloween night because they look like everybody else, even though Alice has watched every single horror movie and feels like she should have been able to save Claire. Since Claire's death, she has pushed everyone away, retreated into her grief, and watched her parents' marriage fall apart. And now it's time for their family tragedy to be back in the spotlight as the murder trial begins. And Alice is the sole witness that could put the defendant, Owen, away. So Alice goes to the bathroom, and Sidney Prescott materializes. She tells Alice that she has the wrong guy. Owen is innocent. Alice is sure of what she saw, and Sidney asks, "Are you really sure?" And then, bam, Alice is whacked in the head and wakes up 1 year earlier. It's Halloween night, and she has a chance to figure out who the killer is and save Claire. So I will say I'm not the biggest YA fan, but I really had a lot of fun with this. This had the right like teenage slasher movie vibes and felt like Fear Street, which I loved when I was a kid. I am sure I checked out every single Fear Street book my hometown's library had like 17 times. Like, this is Scream meets Happy Death Day. Though I do think there were some points that we could have toned down the movie mentions. We know Alice watches a lot of horror movies. There's also a very strange and very random fixation on the movie Click. Like, it's a good movie, I agree, but like, the Sidney Prescott character is obsessed and makes sure that Alice understands it is a criminally underrated movie. It is the best movie ever, according to her. Like, I assume it's meant to be comedic relief, but it's just it's odd. It's odd. It's a weird choice. Now, I did really love the nostalgia vibes in this, even though it does take place in like our current time. This was also pretty funny in points, and it had some really interesting kills, and like the slasher scenes were interesting, and there were a lot of suspects for who the real killer was. Though I did feel that some of the secondary characters weren't really fleshed out that well. Like, we're constantly told how certain characters are Alice's BFFs. I did not get that vibe. I also did not like Alice's hypocrisy. So she says that after Claire died, she went even further into her love of horror movies, and that is all that she watches, but then is all grossed out when other people are dressed up for Halloween and doing scary things. Like, you don't own Halloween or horror, Alice. Oh, and she also casually, like, slut shames a potential victim. The victim is at home in her PJs, which is like a long shirt with no pants. Alice herself says that she too wouldn't be wearing pants, but this victim is a slutty idiot. Dress like that and you deserve to die. Doesn't she know any better? Doesn't she watch horror movies? Alice, you just said yourself that you would be pantsless at home. This victim doesn't know she's a potential victim. Now, I do get the point she is trying to make in how slasher movies, most of the girls somehow end up topless or in teeny tiny little outfits so they look sexy as they're being stabbed. But it just felt really weird coming from Alice. Like, I almost would have preferred the point being made when Alice was at home changing and then the killer surprised her, so she would have to run around the house without pants on, exasperated that she has become the stereotype without meaning to. Like, it is a good point. I mean, like, I recently watched someone on YouTube do a playthrough of, like, a horror video game, and it's set in a hospital, but the main character is running around in a towel. A towel. Not even a hospital gown. Why is she in a towel? Because it's sexy, and she's almost naked. We can see her boobies jiggling as she runs away from the killer. So I get the point that it's trying to make, but it didn't nail the tone. It wasn't making the point that I think it thought it was trying to make. But I still thought that this was a fun, fast read as we watch Alice try to save Claire and the other victims from the original timeline. Like, this book felt like it knew what it wanted to be and had a super fun, campy vibe to it. I was really enjoying this for what it was, and I thought this was for sure on track to be a 4-star read. And then we get near the end and start getting the twists and the reveals, and oh no. There's a twist with the Sidney Prescott character that also, like, her click obsession felt very odd, and in a sense it was kind of laughable. The killer reveal I thought was pretty okay, but it does create some plot holes and makes me rethink how the book could play out the way it did, given what we know about the killer. Their motivation was very cliche, but I also don't feel like there were enough seeds planted to make it believable in this story. And then the ending. That last page made me mad. I was seeing red, and I wasn't even at one of the crime scenes in this thing. I mean, good lord, I took a star right off then and there, and I was not happy. I was having such a good time with this book. I was loving it. Like, this felt like a classic scary movie. Like, this should have been a book that I would be like, oh, maybe I'll reread it next Halloween, even though I know how it ends. I mean, I watch Scream, Hocus Pocus, and Cabin in the Woods every Halloween season, and I still enjoy them. But, like, Christ on a cracker, this ending was so bad that I never want to reread this again. This was an absolute blast up until a certain point. I was having a ball with this book until I wasn't. and the ending felt like it was dragging. Oh no, the killer is looking for me, so I'll go hide in a closet. Oh no, the killer found me. I ran down the stairs and into the basement instead of out the front door. Oh no, they know I'm in the basement, so now I have to hide and figure out how to get out of here. I'm out of the basement, but now I have to hide in the woods. Like, it was the same thing over and over and over again. I just want the killer's mask to be taken off, not just change settings. Now, this book was overall very entertaining, and it had the great slasher moments in it. If you liked the movie Totally Killer, I think this had pretty similar vibes, and again, it was really fun. I just really wish the ending had been as strong as the rest of the book was. Though I will say there were areas where it was a little repetitive, and we constantly hear how, if this was a horror movie, I'd be screaming at my TV. If this was a horror movie, well, I'm screaming at this book. Or she would constantly be like, to be a final girl, I'd have to do X. Like, great, Alice, start making better choices so you can be a final girl. Like, you are not as good as Jamie Kennedy here. In the end, I did end up giving this 3 stars. I really wanted to give it 3.5, but then I think about that ending, and that half a star disappears. This was good. It was a quick read. It was a teenage slasher movie in book form, and I had a ton of fun with it while I could. I just really wanted a better ending. The ending is meant to be punchy, but I just want to punch a pillow. Now, apparently there are some versions of this with a bonus chapter that attempted to tie up some of the loose plot threads, but like, just write that ending in all versions of the book. Why do I have to pay to get a shitty ending when some people pay and get a somewhat less shitty ending? Just seems very, very unfair. So again, I was loving this until I wasn't. Okay, so next up was a book I've had on my to-be-read shelf for 2 years. Yes, 2 years, my bad. But I've been saving it for spooky season, and that is Starling House by Alix E. Harrow. This is my first read by Harrow, and let's go ahead and see what this promised. I dream sometimes about a house I've never seen. Opal is a lot of things. Orphan, high school dropout, full-time cynic, and part-time cashier. But above all, she's determined to find a better life for her younger brother, Jasper. One that gets them out of Eden, Kentucky, a town remarkable for only 2 things: bad luck and E. Starling, the reclusive 19th century author of The Underland, who disappeared over 100 years ago. All she left behind were dark rumors, and her home. Everyone agrees that it's best to ignore the uncanny mansion and its misanthropic heir, Arthur. Almost everyone, anyway. I should be scared, but in the dream, I don't hesitate. Opal has been obsessed with the Underland since she was a child. When she gets the chance to step inside Starling House and make some extra cash for her brother's escape fund, she can't resist. But sinister forces are digging deeper into the buried secrets of Starling House, and Arthur's own nightmares have become far too real. As Eden itself seems to be drowning in its own ghosts, Opal realizes that she might have finally found a reason to stick around. In my dream, I'm home, and now she'll have to fight. Welcome to Starling House. Enter if you dare. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get this out of the way. This is going to be a very unpopular opinion. I struggled with this so much. I feel about this the same way that I did The Hacienda. I expected to like this a lot more than I did. I went into this wanting to love it, but I did not love it as much as I had hoped. Now, I will say maybe it was going from a YA book to this, but I'll be honest again and say that I struggled with the writing style of this. It felt very overdone to me. Like, it is building atmosphere, but it was also very purpley. There were times that I was reading and would realize, like, my eyes were just scanning the page and, like, I had no idea what I would just read. Like, I could not tell you. And I also think that the style and pacing in the beginning really slowed me down. Now, I did have to steal from a Goodreads user named Elliot Scribbles just to kind of summarize this because I think they did a very good job of it. So, Alix E. Harrow can clearly write, but in Starling House, the prose works against the story. Every sentence reaches for meaning. Every object, every room, every glance is described with dramatic weight. It's exhausting. At times, the book reads like it's trying to win a literary award in every paragraph. The result a dense, overworked atmosphere that smothers any real emotion or narrative momentum. And for me, I also felt like this book was like holding back. Like, I know the house is haunted, but the paranormal activity felt very light. The characterization is kind of thin. And then the plot is just plodding along. Like, I feel like we spend more time on this subplot of someone blackmailing Opal to learn more about the house than we as the readers actually learn about the haunted house. And I will say, at first I did sympathize with Opal and like her taking care of her brother, but then she really started to annoy me. She infantilizes her brother and makes some choices that are way out of bounds and very controlling. She refuses to simply have a conversation with anyone, and she is constantly biting the hand that feeds her. She is so antagonistic toward people that are just trying to help. I get that her life has been tough and she's guarded, but I struggle to find any redeeming qualities about her. Like, she's not even funny while she's being mean. She's all, I don't owe anyone anything. But like, she kind of does. She lives rent-free and gets paid very well at Starling House, but then continues to like steal from people around her and insult them constantly. Like, girl, you owe some people some pretty big thank yous. There's also a romance in this that just fell completely flat for me. I felt more chemistry when I used to smush my Barbie and Ken together than I did between these two characters. There were also just some like sloppy edits in this. Like, some character's husband dies in 1869, but the widow starts building the house where the husband died in 1868. We've got a time traveler on our hands. We also have a boring ending on our hands. It felt very much like Breaking Dawn's ending. It's just people talking. My God, why? Why is a book with a haunted house and monsters so boring in the end? And it really just reads to me like Harrow was up against a deadline and half-assed the ending. There are many things that I'm still not sure how they fit or work together. Like, if this were a puzzle, you would look at it, and at first it would look right. But then you would start noticing that, maybe some pieces are jammed in where they don't actually fit, or some pieces are straight up missing. Now, I do think this book is a vibe. Like, it definitely has a feeling to it, but that just was not enough for me. I don't know what this was trying to be. It's said to be gothic and haunting, but we spend more time at the motel that Opal lives at than in the haunted house. The characters are also very immature, and I actually think that this would have worked so much better if the characters were all teenagers and this was a YA. It already reads like it anyway. And then my biggest detractor is this book feels like it just never ends. This book is only about like 300 pages, but read like it was 700. I felt like I was reading for 2 hours, and I'm like, I've read 16 pages. Like, what are we doing here? Why is this book taking me so long to get through it? And then there's also like footnotes at the beginning of the book, and then they just kind of like stop randomly. Like, either commit to the bit or just delete them. They didn't add anything. It's not like they were humorous excerpts or anything. It's just stuff that could have been woven right actually into the story. Now, I do think there are some great ideas and themes in this. I just don't think they came together. Although I do want the name of Harrow's literary agent or PR person, because this was a Book of the Month pick. This was apparently a pick for Reese Witherspoon's book club. And in like Illumicrate and Owlcrate, like, how? I don't get it. And if you loved this, I absolutely love that for you. I really wish I could be on that train with you. And I have heard amazing things about Harrow's work from authors or from other readers that I trust their opinion. I was so excited for this. But this was rough, and I was exhausted by the end. This book is moody, just like our main character Opal, and I did not like it. I'm sorry, I had to give this 1 star. As Opal says in the book, Christ on a bicycle. Okay, in keeping with like spooky season themes, I opted for The Ghostwriter by Julie Clark as my next read. This is my second read by Clark, as I've read The Last Flight while flying to Portugal. It felt very fitting to read on a plane, and it freaked my family out, so a win-win all around. But let's go ahead and see what this promised. June 1975. The Taylor family shatters in a single night when 2 teenage siblings are found dead in their own home. The only surviving sibling, Vincent, never shakes the whispers and accusations that he was the one who killed them. Decades later, the legend only grows as his career as a horror writer skyrockets. Ghostwriter Olivia Dumont has spent her entire professional life hiding the fact that she is the only child of Vincent Taylor. Now, on the brink of financial ruin, she's offered a job to ghostwrite her father's last book. What she doesn't know, though, is that this project is another one of his lies, because it's not another horror novel he wants her to write. After 50 years of silence, Vincent Taylor is finally ready to talk about what really happened that night in 1975. Okay, I could not put this down. I stayed up super late when I first started reading this because I was just so sucked into the story. I love this. This has a great mystery. Things keep flip-flopping. Like, I would think it's going in one direction and then it would switch as we got like new information. We know that Vincent isn't completely reliable, but at the same time, is anyone really? Do we see what we want to see? And so that is our vision or our version of what actually happened that night. Do we have the right context to understand what we saw and what it actually means? Now, this is very much a slow burn and it teases the reveals out. I do think they are well placed, but at times I was a bit confused by the timeline, especially in the present. Like, Olivia has been with her father for weeks, but only has like one chapter or story idea or scene or something of this book done. Like, the timeline to me just felt very off for this, and I think it might have helped to have a tighter turnaround, or going back to earlier what I said, like the ticking time clock aspect. Like, she has to get this done ASAP so we can keep things moving. Now, I did really love the puzzle aspect and how Vincent is really making Olivia work for her clues and the overall story. Is it a bit contrived because he could just tell her what's going on? Sure. But it does work for the story, as Vincent loved playing these types of games, and at least Olivia is doing the work instead of just being told everything. Overall, I liked our main character, Olivia. I just think we could have gotten to know her a bit better. This is very focused on her relationship with her father, and it is done well, but I feel like all I know about Olivia are her relationships to other people. She has her parents, who she's not close with, and her boyfriend Tom, who she's very close with. Can I get a few more personality, like, traits or quirks here? Now, I did love the feelings of nostalgia that this evoked as we revisit the 70s, as well as the feelings of just, like, revisiting home, especially when you've got complicated feelings about your childhood. I also think the final reveal worked pretty well with what we've learned, but at the same time, it also still felt a bit anticlimactic, and it kind of opens a plot hole in a way, or at least I think it does. But at least the book does take the time to tie everything up, and we have a very lovely denouement at the end. I'm honestly torn between my rating. It's either a 3.5 or a 4. I think I'm going to round up and give this a 4. This had some great themes. It was very thoughtful. It was a fun mystery, and it really packed a punch. Overall, this was engaging, immersive, and I think Clarke's writing was superb. Now, I do want to provide some content warnings, as this book does cover some heavier topics. That does include the termination of a pregnancy, a parent having a cognitive impairment, a parent abandoning their child, violence, essay, and predatory behaviors against children. If those could be triggers for you, please go into this cautiously or avoid it altogether. Okay, so I ended spooky season with a collection of short horror stories in Every House is Haunted by Ian Rogers. Let's go ahead and see what this promised. In this brilliant debut collection, Ian Rogers explores the border places between our world and the dark reaches of the supernatural. A mysterious double murder draws the attention of an insurance company with a special interest in the paranormal. A honeymoon cabin with an unspeakable appetite finally meets its match. A suburban home is transformed into the hunting ground for a new breed of spider. A nightmarish jazz club at the crossroads of reality plays host to those who can break a deal with the devil, for a price. With remarkable deftness, Rogers draws together the deadly and the disturbing in 22 showcase stories that will guide you through terrain at once familiar and startling fresh. So I have to be honest, this was not my jam. I didn't think the stories were very scary. Like, sure, there were times they were unsettling, but I also don't really feel like these are short stories. They're slice of life or snapshots or random excerpts. But many of the stories just end abruptly, and for me, they fell so flat. So many left me wondering, like, what was the point of that? Like, I even wondered at times if these were just abandoned scenes or chapters from like other drafts of Roger's work, or if he simply forgot to come back to the story and write the real ending. I'm truly baffled how some of these stories end because they're not good endings. And I just could not connect with any of the stories or characters. I was so bored that I fell asleep reading this on 2 separate occasions. I was 100 pages in and wondering, like, okay, when are the like horror aspects supposed to kick in? Like, I wanted a scary stories to tell in the dark. You remember those books? Like, those were terrifying. But I wanted that for adults. I wanted that sense of dread and foreboding and being creeped out, and I never once felt that while reading this collection. I do think there were some unique ideas here, and there could be some cool characters, but we only spend like 5 pages with them. The ideas are good, but we do nothing with them. Now, I do think he is a talented writer, and I probably would be interested in picking up a full-length novel from him where he really has the time to build out the story and flesh out the characters. I ended up giving it another 100 pages, and then I decided to DNF. I was not having a good time with this book. And since really there was no overarching plot, I did not feel like I was missing out on anything by simply not finishing this book. Now, I did make sure to read The Ashley House, as apparently it's going to be adapted for Netflix. Like, it's an interesting premise, but again, it doesn't read like an actual like story. There's no beginning, middle, and end. I also was curious at points if the stories are supposed to be connected. Like, 2 stories repeat the exact same line word for word. I checked, and 2 stories have characters named Sally. Is it the same Sally? Like, I don't think so, but who knows? And I will say this could be a it's not you, it's me situation, as this has amazing reviews saying it's so evocative and haunting and creepy, whereas I was sitting here begging for this book to just give me the creeps. And by the time some of the stories were actually getting good or feeling like they were about to make a poignant statement, they just end. At a certain point, I felt primed not to love any of the stories after so many had ended so badly. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. I finally realized that the best Halloween treat I could give myself was to not trick myself into even hate reading this just to finish it. I mean, maybe I'll try again next year to see if I'm in a better place, or like maybe this just wasn't the right read for me at the time. But I did not like this collection. I didn't think it was that good. It's a bummer to end such a good overall month on such a downer note. I guess I ended it the way I started it, which is poetic, but I'm not loving it. Okay, so that was everything that I read in October. I will probably be reading a few more like spooky books that I didn't get to this month as we move into November. But if you do have any recommendations for books that I should read in November, please let me know by leaving a comment below. Otherwise, thanks for watching, and I will see you next month in the reading room.